Hi everyone, thank you so much for coming out tonight. I'm so excited to introduce Shelly Caldwell. She is the artist that has work kind of sprinkled around this space. Also a huge thank you to Arts Place and Cool's Occasions for letting us use this space. It's been really fun to see the work and the space kind of collaborate together. So I'm just going to turn it over to Shelly and she's going to talk more about her work.
Thanks, Molly.
Yeah.
Yeah, as Molly said, I'm Shelly Caldwell. I'm not a local artist, but I've had local ties to Hutch for quite a few years now through the Kerrigan family. When you know Dan back there, Casey's my partner. I was super grateful that Arts Place was willing to host this exhibit so that we could still have my exhibit this year and have the community see my work while the Art Center is in transit. Just a nice heads up, I will be showing in the new location next year during this time as well, so you can all see more of my 2D work as well as the installation-based side of my practice, because I make large-scale site-specific installation work as well. So I'm just going to keep it super brief, and I'd rather open it up to questions or anything you all would want to know more about. But just a quick background is that I have my BFA and my MA in drawing and painting and installation from Minnesota State University Mankato, where I've taught as adjunct faculty. I've taught at Gustavus. I do a lot of intermittent teaching at different art centers, individual classes and lessons and things like that. I am a professional practicing artist. I've received state arts board grants and other local and regional grants, and I show mainly out of like the Mankato area, but really all throughout southern Minnesota and beyond, but that's sort of my hub. So you'll usually find me most active in Mankato, with Hutch as sort of my home away from home, so to speak. So my artistic practice is anchored in drawing first and foremost. So even though I am also an installation artist, my installations are usually comprised of a lot of drawn components or two-dimensional items as well, just pulled out in space. So in Arts Place, I have 3 different versions of my 2D work. I work in a way that's sort of progressive, and I always cycle back to certain series of works or certain processes that are almost always evident in my work. They just kind of come and go with the seasons or the years. So the work that's most present are my plant silhouette works, where I'm looking at actual plants collected from nature and then adding in some spontaneous India ink work in the background, and then adding some final drawing touches. So those are taken from real live plants collected in a pretty scientific way and then drawn and cataloged, and it's really this ongoing body of work that I've done over several years and intend to continue working on for years to come. The black and white, more collaged and cut paper works that there's some in the windows as well as along the back wall are more indicative of my current work. They came out of a pandemic project where I was working with images that other plant enthusiasts would send to me, and then I would translate those images in a certain way. So they're sort of inverting the light and the shadow of the actual imagery that was sent to me. So much like these works focus on the silhouette of the plant or the shadow of the plant, so too do these black and white works, and that anywhere where there's pattern in the drawing is actually shadow, and then any other areas of black paper are where the light was in the drawing, and then the gray paper stands in for any actual objects or three-dimensional substance that was in the image. And then lastly, some of the smaller black and white works, like over here in the side bookcase, are what I refer to as like my automatic drawing, or those of you that were in class, it's my couch work. So those are just to do something. We all get stuck in ruts sometimes, so especially when I'm struggling or at a point where I'm not exactly sure how to proceed with my more major work in my studio, I'll bring it back to drawing just for drawing's sake, or thinking about it like I did when I was a kid and just sitting down and starting a drawing with no rhyme or reason or real intention on where it's going to go, but just filling the page with pattern and mark making in a way that feels right as it progresses. So that said, does anybody have any questions, or would anyone like me to elaborate more on any of those things?
Do you have a scale that's your favorite to work at? Do you have these huge pieces and then really small pieces?
It kind of depends on the process, but quite frankly, my favorite scale are the large pieces or bigger, which took a long time to get to. As a kid or when you're in college, it's intimidating to work big, or you think about how much time that might take, or you think about how much the materials cost, especially at a large scale. But a larger scale will usually allow you to be a lot freer with your process and give you a lot more room to let things play out on the page. During class earlier, we were talking about how there's a starting idea and there's an end point, but there's a lot that happens between those two things, and that end result is never what you had planned in the beginning. And the most satisfying part, I think, as an artist is like everything that does happen in between. At a certain point, it's done and you're ready to move on, but there's a lot of discovery, there's a lot of trial and error, and there's a lot of sidetracks that come into play when you're working through that initial idea and trying to get to an end result. So a larger surface allows a lot more of that play to happen and a lot more discovery that's worthwhile to happen. Good question, Mom. Anybody else? Yeah.
What kinds of things do you see for your arts in the future?
It's always rooted in the same background, but sort of progressing. I had mentioned I sort of return to ideas. So the notion of drawing and plants are sort of staples in my work, but they certainly cycle out in different ways. So currently, the imminent future is that I'm working on a series of drawings about vegetable plants. It's very gardening and seasonal specific, and it's sort of tracking the progression of the life cycle of a plant to kind of relate to a different community as well. These are more geared toward people who are looking at what's naturally occurring, like out in the woods, maybe in a state park, whereas the pandemic project was clearly a little more interior bound. So the next work that's in development is looking at that niche of vegetable gardening and what those plants look like from, we'll say, from seed to supper, so to speak. Good question. Great. Well, you guys are all welcome to chat or ask me questions one-on-one as well. I'll be around for quite a while here. And as I mentioned, do come back and see us again next year in the new art center, and you can see an elaboration of these works as well as that extension into my installation-based work. And thanks again to Arts Place for giving us this opportunity to still have a show this year. Thank you guys.